Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
From the Daily Detroit studio at Techtown, this is your Daily Detroit for Thursday, January 4th, 2024. I am J.R. Stays, and across the table from me for the first time in a couple of weeks, because he has been traveling the world. I don't know if you've done it in 80 days, but Norris Howard, how are you?
Yes, I've returned from the sunny Gulf of Mexico, the shores of Central America, and the sandy beaches of the West Indies. I've now arrived back in cold, gloomy Michigan to let the snows and rains revitalize my 2024.
It's like one of those ice baths where you just like jump in.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm glad I got the break, but by the last day of my excursions into the sunny Caribbean, I was ready to get back to being able to see my breath and wear my very, very trendy hiking shoes.
Do you think it's important if you have the means or ability to go get a little bit of warmth in the middle of the winter season?
The way I feel about it is it doesn't matter when you go. I'm not a seasonal depression kind of person. I don't really care. It doesn't affect me. I love the wintertime, actually.
Really?
Yeah, actually, I love the wintertime. I love the snow. I love the cold. I love the concept of all four seasons because it allows us to see the transformative power of nature. But if you can go on vacation at any time of year, you should, period. So that's what I would say. It doesn't matter if you do it in the winter or not.
I think that, as always, Detroit never sleeps.
Yeah.
And there's always something to discuss. And one of the things I saw over the break that I thought was interesting was a piece from Carol Kane in the Detroit Free Press. And we're not going to discuss the whole piece because if we discuss a whole piece, I want to have that person on there, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't want to talk about somebody without them having to be there or talk about it for themselves. But one piece out of four, yeah, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And this piece was 4 questions key to Detroit keeping its Motor City nickname in 2024. And this is in context of talking about the auto show on yesterday's show and Restaurant Week and how big of an economic impact that was for people. The question raised in this, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes for the rest of them, is it time for the Detroit Auto Show to return to its January roots? She alludes to talking to CEOs who want to move it back to January, how although it's less convenient, it kind of stands on its own. I will note, though, that would put it right up against, like, CES, which is a huge deal.
Yeah.
I had some thoughts about this one because I respect the work, but I think I disagree with this opinion because I don't think the problem is the time of year.
No, the problem is not the time of year. I think the main issue is that currently the big three kind of lack identity. They kind of lack the cultural cachet that they used to have. The auto show here in Detroit used to be not just a star-studded event locally, but internationally. It's the international.
There were 5,000 journalists in this town.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah.
And now nowhere near. Not
this was the show. If you were anyone who is anyone in the automotive industry,
not
this
just
was
the big
show.
three.
Yeah, this was the show you went to. I remember the days of Ferrari and Maserati and Benz and, all the major, BMW, all the major automakers globally coming to this show. And I think over the past 25 years, it's lost a lot of that because of the confluence of automotive and new tech. As you mentioned, CES. A lot of reveals are happening at CES now and not at the auto show.
Now, you cover gaming and tech in your other lives. For those who don't know, CES, give me a quick explainer. Give people a quick explainer.
CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, this is where all the new doohickeys for the next couple of years get shown off. So, smart TVs, as of, the past couple of years, there's been a huge emphasis on AI technologies, smart home technologies, all the things that you are looking forward to put on your kitchen counter and get freaked out because it keeps talking to you. That stuff is going to get, revealed at CES. And now you're starting to see a lot of automotive technology get revealed at CES because your car now is just a big computer with 4 tires at this point.
Many people view it more, and especially newer car buyers view it more as something closer to a phone than a car. And I think about the recent uproar and the difference between General Motors and Ford on General Motors trying to push this infotainment system on people, and Ford being like, yep, we're going to do Google and we're going to do Apple CarPlay. We're just going to give people what they want, and how much that has affected people. We've had listeners, I've had friends be like, yeah, I'm just not going to buy a GM now because I just want CarPlay. Like, I understand why automotives want to hold on to this part of the value chain because it is part of the identifying feature of a vehicle. I hate to say this. I think they've already lost that. It's done.
Yeah, it's done. It not only has it been done in the same way that, let's be honest and say terrestrial radio has been effectively killed by Spotify, Untitled, and all the rest of those
Especially
folks.
on the music side, yeah.
And on the music side, not necessarily so much for sports radio and public radio, but that ship has sailed. And I think it's sailed on a lot of things for the American automakers. I think on EVs, the ship has sailed. I don't think they can win. I think it's already done. I think when you see what a lot of the Chinese automakers have already been able to achieve, they're already 10 years behind. You look at what Tesla's been able to do, even though I don't necessarily like Tesla, you see what they've been able to do in terms of the ubiquity of their vehicles. They are already a decade behind, and that affects the auto show.
And on Monday, we're going to have a conversation with a reporter from Bloomberg talking about the Michigan company that Chinese investors bought out of our country, out of bankruptcy, and how that improved their technology, that this technology we built here that got exported overseas, and how, our lack of industrial policy really hurt us. And these are kind of stories when we're talking about EVs that I have nothing against EVs. I've driven EVs. I enjoy EVs. I would totally own like a Mach-E or something like that. But there is a thing here where there's some catch-up being played, and I don't think that all is lost. I don't think that they're going to go away. But I do think that there are definite real challenges there that you only see if you have more of an international vision of the industry.
I'm going to use a video game analogy here, not to, alienate anybody, but it's kind of like the Xbox versus the PlayStation, right? That ship has sailed. Sony has effectively whooped Microsoft on the console side for the better part of 15 years. They lost. And that's why you see Microsoft pivoting to more of a Netflix-style Game Pass where they get you on a thing monthly. They don't care about selling the console anymore because they can't beat Sony at it. At this point, the infotainment move is sort of GM trying to figure out how do we create value and incentive in the vehicles that we know we can't make better than all these other competitors.
They also have large dominance in the truck category.
They do.
Truck and large SUVs, and that is really important and profitable. The
and
Ford
municipal
F-150,
vehicles.
Yeah, the Ford F-150 is still the number one vehicle for a reason, and that's American culture. And I see that as a pretty safe place.
Absolutely, and that's going to be the wheelhouse, I think, of at least a couple of the major automakers, obviously. Well, I'll count all three because if you say between the F-150, the Silverado, and the Ram, I mean, there you go. But I think when it comes to EVs and it comes to, onboard technologies, there is a little bit of catch-up that they have to play. But to bring it full circle back to the auto show, I think moving it back to January forces these automakers to make a choice of, do we show it off at CES or do we show it off in Detroit? And I know almost every executive would pick a trip to Vegas over a trip to Detroit. So that off the rip is going to cause a major conflict. And the thing about it is, we haven't necessarily over the past 25 years established as the big three automakers as honestly leaders pushing forward the industry. I remember when people were talking about like gold bay doors and stuff, the flashy things that make people go, wow. Oh, the only vehicle I've seen that has been American made that I've seen people truly look at that is on the street right now is the Cadillac EV, the truck. I forget the name of it, but that is one of the few vehicles on the street that is American made that when you see it, people go, oh my God, wow. Even the new mid-engine Corvette Stingrays, people were just looking at it like, oh, that's a really, really dope looking sports car, but it's clearly Ferrari coded.
Well, I also think that part of this is outreach and thinking about what the auto show could be. And cards on table, auto show never reaches out to us. Mm-hmm. They don't talk to us. Mm-hmm. I literally speak at Mish Auto. I literally host panels. I literally host automotive panels, and they literally can't bother because they're that disorganized.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to go public with that, but I'm not saying I deserve that or anything, mm-hmm. but it tells you, because there's only one automaker, and it would be Ford, mm-hmm. that, like, we're going to have a futurist for Ford on the show. The other automakers pay no attention, and they're consistently focused only on broadcast. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that as like, oh, we should get attention, but it tells me who's looking at where their head's at. And, I want to support the auto show. I want to be positive about the auto show. I would have loved to do more stuff with it. But I'm also like, wow, you're not even going to make somebody available to talk to us? Come on. And I don't want to be like the negative guy. I mean, we have a lot of connections. I don't mean this to brag, but it's more of like, we talk to lots of people. We're going to the Detroit, like we're out there and they can't be bothered to like pay attention to anybody under 50. Come on. Like, no wonder nobody cares in our age group. And not that nobody cares, but it's just not, it's not the exciting thing that it was.
But the thing is they're not leaning on the thing that got people to go to the auto show. What got people to go? Reveal the concepts. Talk about this is available this year, or the drivable concepts, or the look forward.
So you're saying not just the region, because right now, as Eric Tritko on a previous show, like earlier last year, talked about, it's very much more a regional car show.
Yes.
Where the dealers like, oh, here's our models, here's our stuff, go drive something. You're saying that there can be some of that, as there always is, but there needs to be more future flash, more vision.
I don't want to go to the auto show and necessarily see a car I can buy today.
You want to see a car you could buy tomorrow.
I want to see the vehicle of tomorrow. I want to see the industry being pushed forward. I want to see what is the future of automotive, because right now I can go to LaFontaine or Summit Place Kia and
By the way, if any dealer would like to become the sponsor, so we could be like, yes, you're going to go, whatever.
And see the automotive of today. No, that's not what I want to see. And that's part of the issue, is that the North American International Auto Show that is centered in Detroit is too centered on the right now, because they want people to buy cars right now, when in reality, they should be trying to capture the imagination of the car buyer of tomorrow.
So imagine what would happen if someone like a Ford or a GM did something where it's not just about showing the cars, but everyone talks about mobility, but like,
Show me how that's possible.
Show me the cool stuff. Show me the concepts that I see that like, oh, we're going to roll that out in China. Let's roll it out in Detroit first.
So late last year, we were able to go and see the electric charging rope. The Electrion's charging rope. That should have been an auto show exhibit, period. It should have been done. It should have been finished. It should have been ready to roll. And they should have had a multitude of shuttles that take you out there, that show you how it works.
And the shuttle yourself.
You get in the shuttle yourself and you sit in it and you see the thing charging.
And they put a monitor on the side of the van so the outside world can see it.
That should have been a January auto show exhibit, period. Right? Or January, September, it doesn't matter when it was, but that should have been an auto show exhibit. You're talking about the future of mobility. That's when you're supposed to be talking about that kind of stuff, because ultimately, when I remember the auto show, I remember moments of being able to sit in the Rolls Royce Phantom when I was 19 years old and open the door and hit the little button and see the umbrella pop out of the door and going like, this is so absurd, but also very cool.
I remember when I think I was a kid. I think I was a kid when Chrysler or Jeep just like drove the truck through the glass, through the lobby.
Yeah.
Like, that's the cool stuff, man.
Yeah. And that's what
There's got to be some pizzazz, especially in this world where like, oh, well, people can just shop online. You need to make media moments, and that's how you do it, where people go, holy crap. Look, I'm not the biggest like Tesla fan, but throwing a bowling ball or whatever at the window, or having like Joe Rogan shoot arrows at it, it's crazy. It's like, it's over the top, but also everybody pays attention.
Flat out. And the last thing I want to say is that we all grew up, at least many young men in America grew up with Mustangs and Ferraris and Lamborghinis and in their favorite cars growing up, with posters on the wall. We kind of grew up that way. Or at least nowadays, what I consider the modern poster of the wall is the phone wallpaper nowadays. Kids with Ferraris and Lamborghinis as wallpapers on their phones. And it's like, the auto show has to get back to that. So to me, the time of year is virtually inconsequential. Is we have to get back to capturing the imagination of the young kid who wants to be a gearhead, who wants to be a petrol head, as they say in the UK, and capture their imagination.
I can't help but think of the fact, it ended up in my social feeds, but The Rock was back out on WWE.
Yeah.
And all I can think of is, it doesn't matter when the show is.
It's true.
It doesn't matter when the show is.
True.
You can't be a jabroni. You got to have a show. And it doesn't matter what time. What matters is there the pizzazz? Is there the wow?
And that's what's been lost, is the show element.
So Norris, you texted me because I sent out a newsletter yesterday. We're really working on getting that newsletter out more often for 2024. So much great feedback already. And thank you for the new memberships, by the way. Some people who threw in for that. So it's really appreciated. But newsletter went out, And we talked about a little bit of the Michigan Growing Together Council, some of the stuff that's going to be coming up with the Detroit Policy Conference. And I want to have people from the state on the show. I was talking with them before the new year to make that happen. I put out a poll out there, and I was surprised to see how stark it was. Do you think Michigan needs more people to live here? And 70% said yes, which is different than kind of the vibe I sometimes get from social media, where people are like, I don't know if we need more people. Only 19% no, and 11% not sure. But 70%, that tells me, at least among our readers, and there are thousands of readers, thousands and thousands.
The multitudes.
I watch 10 minutes of wrestling, and all of a sudden I'm going back to when I was 15 years old. The thousands and thousands of daily Detroit fans out there anyway, if only I was Jack like The Rock. But 70% say Michigan needs more people to live here. Devin poked at me about it. Then you poked me about it. All right, what is it? Come on.
First of all, do more people need to live in Michigan? Not really. Because first of all, where are they going to go? There's no more.
Well, you know where they're going to go. Listen, all those trees you clear cut for solar panels that the people said
that's where they got to go. No. That's where they got to go. Because it ain't no more space.
This is a late callback, by the way.
Yeah, people. It ain't no more space in Ann Arbor. It ain't no more space in the inner ring suburbs in Berkeley and Ferndale.
I think there's more space, but you got to build different.
You got to build different. That's what I'm saying. You got to build in a way that those municipalities don't necessarily want to build. Okay, you got to move them to Detroit. So the answer to the question is, do more people need to live in Michigan? Yeah, but those people also need to live in Detroit. That's, to me, I think the major takeaway, because
there's room for 1 million people in this city.
There's room for 1 million more people. Yeah. Let me put it that way. The city was built for 2 million people, and we got a third of that. Take that how you will, but that's where people need to live. And I know this is going to be slightly controversial in saying it, because obviously people want to live a certain lifestyle. Certain people want to live in the suburbs, and I think that's all fine. People should be able to live wherever they want to live. But ultimately, where people need to go when they come to the state of Michigan is the population center, which is still the city of Detroit. And I think the disconnect here is that we can't keep building out. You know, where I live now, and this is me saying that as somebody who has moved to the suburbs fairly recently, but to see the suburbs continually encroach upon the rural communities, I can see why there is animosity. I can see why there is friction. I can see why those ideologies constantly are butting heads up against one another, because it's pretty stark. And I think when we have a city that actually needs people, not could fit more, needs more people, I think the state needs to be focused more on getting people to live in the city of Detroit, as opposed to just trying to live in more exurbs.
That's a politically impossible question. And
no, it's not.
Yes, it is, because in order for this whole council to work, people are like, oh, we need people from the UP. And there's people from the UP saying there needs to be more people moving to the UP as part of this. Having covered this, a Detroit-focused only strategy will not get the support you need of the rest of the state.
No, listen. I'm not necessarily saying that it needs to be a Detroit focused only. First of all, that, again, you're right. That is not just politically impossible. It's, I think, economically impossible as well, because certain people are just going to want to live in the suburbs.
And you've got the growth of Grand Rapids and places like that.
And Grand Rapids is another city that I think is a great city, and it's magnificent. I've been there many times, and I've spent a lot of time in Grand Rapids, and it's really cool up there. The thing about it is that if we continually bifurcate our population center, we are going to have this sort of weird situation in which there is no place for those centers of innovation and thought and creativity to coalesce around. And that is the important part that I think people seem to forget about cities and large municipalities. It's not just about, infrastructure. It's not just about having a tax base. It's not just about having good schools. What makes cities thrive and cool is culture. And it's hard to make that when everybody continually self-segregates themselves into little enclaves and bastions where everybody thinks and feels the same thing.
One of the things I thought that was interesting that I saw was that the White House named no innovation hubs in Michigan. And I know that there was a Detroit applicant and there were some other applicants, but none of those innovation hubs in this round were named in Michigan. And that stands in stark contrast and maybe even shows a little bit of the issue that we have. I mean, there are a lot of resources and interesting things here, but you're right. It's almost like that condensation that needs to happen, but that's difficult.
You need concentrated energy, and that's what cities do. The reason why I use New York as a huge example, but that's an outlier, but I'll use a city like Atlanta, which over the past 20 years has become a massive concentration of Black creativity, of essentially Black Hollywood with Tyler Perry and his massive compound down there. You had Disney filming a lot of the Marvel movies in Georgia as well, which thanks Rick Snyder for canceling all the film credits. But, it's one of those things where you're able to do that in the greater Atlanta area because you already have a concentration of people who want to do those types of things. That is hard to do when you got a huge population that is spread out over a very large state. It's just logistically difficult. So to me, when it comes down to this conversation, do more people need to live in Michigan? Sure. But ultimately, more people need to live in Detroit. Flat out.
I would love to hear what listeners think. dailydetroit@gmail.com or 313-789-3211. One thing we didn't get into before we wrap up here, Norris, there were a lot of predictions made.
Yeah.
And when you were on vacation, maybe you were a little salty. Were you sour, salty? Something came through where it was like, you didn't get your chance to do a prediction or two.
Yeah,
and
I was a bit upset about that.
It wasn't intentional. You were literally on a sun-drenched beach.
Yeah, I know.
Frankly, we all should be jealous of you.
I can't be that mad.
But prediction or two, give it to us.
I think one of my big predictions for the city of Detroit is I think we're going to be looking at potentially our first female mayor. We may be voting for our first female mayor. I just feel that in my mind.
So that builds off the prediction that Devin and I made.
Yeah, I feel like in my mind's eye, I think Detroit might be leaning towards its first female mayor. And I won't name names. I feel that in my bones. I also feel like, we had the auto show conversation, and I think if this year does not go well for the auto show, I think it's in serious trouble. I don't care that the big three are here. I think it's going to be something that's going to require a lot of extra thought, and we may not see it in its current capacity in the future as it is now if this year does not go well. You're starting to see a lot of events fall by the wayside.
New ones, in some cases, to fill their place. Like last year, there was Automate. The energy around that, we did an episode on it. It killed it. It brought tons of people here. It was for all the robotic stuff, right? It was all about.
Is it the North American International Auto Show? It is not. It is not. It's new energy, is good energy.
And it's a rotating show that goes to different cities every year.
Exactly. You don't have that every year. So I think that's ultimately fine.
And there's definitely bookings up, and there's needs for hotels. There's all kinds of positives, but I see what you're saying. Signature events.
Yes, signature events.
That are ours.
Yes, I think the Lions will lose in the NFC Championship. I think, everybody.
So win a game, get to the NFC Championship, but lose in the championship.
And lose. I think that Michigan will be national champions. And I think in terms of the city of Detroit, we actually will see population growth for 2024.
Whoa.
But it won't be massive. It'll be very slow, minor growth.
Is this kind of the situation where you kind of got to stop the car before you turn it around?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a really positive thing, Norris Howard.
Yeah, I think that's positive. And the only reason I say that is because I just look at, the new apartments and in the new neighborhood revitalizations that are happening, in downtown and Corktown and those central areas. And I think it will entice some people to move to the city. And so I think we'll see some minor population growth.
I know I hear it from people because if there's any show that people pick up when they land here, I have learned. And we're very grateful for all of you.
Absolutely, we're grateful for all of you, and keep listening. And as a matter of fact, when you're trying to convince any of your friends or family to move to the Metro Detroit area, use this as your guide. As a matter of fact, I predict that maybe Daily Detroit might be guiding you in other ways in 2020.
Norris Howard, so good to see you. Missed you, man.
Yeah, it's good to be back, and it's good to be talking about all things Detroit. And also, I've been doing a bad job of this, as you can find me at Great Laker Nori.
Yes, you've been doing a terrible job of it.
Nori at Twitter, Instagram, Threads, pretty much anywhere online. And also, for all the soccer fans, you can listen to me on Football Furioso on Spotify.
All the soccer.
All the soccer.
Well, with that, I am Jairus Days. Thank you so much for listening. Do not forget to tell your friends about the show. Leave 5 stars in your favorite podcast app, or else Norris will find you. And
and verbally harm you.
Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit. Talk tomorrow.